Welcome back, everyone, to another great episode I got for you on your favorite new movie review YouTube channel. You know what's up. This is your lovely host with the most. Do I really need an introduction? Well, okay. It's Peter, man. What's up, y'all? And we got a new review today on Man Cinema Reviews. This is the latest from auteur director Baz Luhrmann in his biopic of the legendary rock and roll icon Elvis. Before we get into it, let's go ahead and take care of some business. You know what you got to do. We got to press like. We also got to subscribe and press the notification bell as well to keep up to date to every and all review here on Man Cinema Reviews. As always, to the new subscribers, thank you for choosing Man Cinema Reviews. This is the rise to stardom for the legendary Elvis Presley. In his humble beginnings in Memphis, we see him align himself with a enigmatic manager, Colonel Tom Parker. And this is going to be a whirlwind of events, but we also have to highlight the love of Elvis's life, and that was Priscilla Presley as well. So it's a no-brainer that Baz Luhrmann, with just his aesthetic, is very colorful, very bombastic, very loud, very vibrant, and you couldn't get a better director than Baz Luhrmann. He is there for the theatrics. If you know him from past films like Romeo and Juliet, Moulin Rouge, Australia, The Great Gatsby, you know that Baz Luhrmann is with the theatrics. And I think with a rock icon like Elvis Presley, you need that bombastic and loud, vibrant filmmaker like Baz. So it made sense, and I was very much looking forward to this film. The performances alone, Austin Butler steps into the role of Elvis Presley with gusto. This is a young, talented, charismatic, not too hard on the eyes young actor. So it's great to see him in a breakout role, taking on an icon like Elvis Presley. It's great to see that even though he doesn't necessarily look like Elvis Presley, he definitely got his mannerisms, he got his voice inflections to just surpass the average Elvis impersonator that you might see walking down the strip in Las Vegas. He really embodies the role of Elvis Presley, and I really think that the big takeaway of this new biopic is his performance. I think Baz Luhrmann's aesthetic works. I feel like it starts off really fast paced, and I think a lot of audiences enjoy that fast cut that Baz Luhrmann is known for, but it gets a little bit delirious. You feel kind of just elated, even though it starts off with a strong and fast-paced opening. The pacing of the film does give it some concern. I think if you focused more on Priscilla Presley and Elvis, you had the movie's heart at its core. But I feel like the film is doing too much. I feel like with an almost 3-hour runtime, the film likes to fast forward throughout Elvis Presley's accolades. I feel like the suspension of time is played with. We don't know if it's months, whether it's years, whether it's decades that we see. It plays with time relatively just a little bit sloppy. I feel like the pacing, it's a bit of a slog to get through within the second act, and by the third act, it does really raise the profile of Elvis Presley with Austin Butler's performance, but that doesn't do enough to hold the audience in my opinion. Now, if you have naysayers, or if you have people that want to criticize Elvis for all that he did with traditionally African American music, rock and roll music, was music primarily in the start a black music form. So when it's exploited almost by Elvis Presley, taking rhythm and blues, soul, even gospel music, and packaging it to white America, it does feel rather exploitative. And I know that Baz Luhrmann does highlight this. He has characters in and out of Elvis Presley's life with B.B. King, Little Richard, and just these artists that were around Elvis, shaping and molding what Elvis Presley's style was. Yet a lot of detail does not go into how that he basically took these people's music and brought it to the forefront. Now, whether you look at it as homage, if you look at it as respect, and I'm not saying that Elvis Presley didn't respect these artists. In fact, I know he did respect the music. He had the passion. You can tell he did. But it's just the exploitative matter that it's hard to digest. And I feel like it is almost glazed. Luhrmann does get into Elvis Presley going to Beale Street, hanging out with artists, his contemporaries, but he was a white artist that felt like he had to bring this music to the forefront. And I feel like it did things to bridge the gap with the civil rights movement. It's Elvis Presley that propelled black music and gave it that edge, and it brought to the forefront to American audiences. But again, I feel like it's glazed over with the fact that it does feel a little bit exploitative. We do get these artists in and out of Elvis Presley's life, but again, the film propels it. It's giving homage to Elvis, and I get that. We're not seeing a biopic of Elvis's contemporaries, but again, to feel like it glazes over that fact, it feels like a little bit of disservice. But these are little nitpicks that I have. And, exploitative matters aside, I still feel that the film is very messy. It does become a chore to watch, with all the homage and great performance that Austin Butler gives. Another negative aspect that I have of this is Tom Hanks as the enigmatic manager, Colonel Tom Parker. Now, he's doing this kind of Southern, kind of Creole, kind of, Cajun, mashup, European. I believe he was a Slavic. He wasn't an American citizen, but he carried himself as such. And to not, back then, to blend in rather, he did hide his residency here. He knew that he'd get in trouble with the law. He never gained a green card. So there is this enigmatic character kind of turning the wheels in Elvis Presley's life. But we know that the problematic relationship between the two characters, as Elvis is unknowingly exploiting black music, his manager is exploiting Elvis. He's basically treating Elvis as a slave, which is really, it's a character study that I guess Luhrmann really dives into, because it almost feels like Colonel Tom Parker's story rather than Elvis Presley's story, because it's in kind of a narrative where he plays a unreliable narrator. It's almost seen through his eyes because he's introducing the film. He died after Elvis Presley had passed away. But this is a man that wants to convince you of his innocence, that he was looking out for Elvis Presley when we know otherwise, that we are not going to be sheep. We're not going to have the veil pulled over us. We're not going to get the rug pulled over under us. We know what this character is. He's very sleazy. He's using Elvis to gain notoriety in Las Vegas, where Elvis wanted to take his music international. He wanted to do international tours, but the latter half of Elvis's life is primarily spent in Vegas, where just Colonel Tom Parker did take advantage of Elvis Presley. And Elvis had passed at a relatively young age of 42, but he did do a lot to propel rock and roll music, by any means. And whether it was a bridging of the gap, whether you look at it as exploiting, a black music art form, Elvis Presley definitely is a character, an icon that is, very unique in music. And it was a story that needed to be told. It has been told previously in numerous miniseries, TV films, but not to the scope that Baz Luhrmann brings it on the big screen. And we knew that it was coming. However, I felt very mixed with this film. I think that the pacing is just very sloppy, despite great performances by Austin Butler and Olivia DeJonge as Elvis and Priscilla Presley. I think the biggest negatives outweigh the positives. I think the pacing is terrible. I think the length, you do feel the running time, and the caricature of Tom Hanks as Colonel Tom Parker, it just stands out like a sore thumb, that it was almost relatively excruciating to continue the film with Tom Hanks having such a big role, but playing it too hokey, or the accent doesn't stick. It is very inconsistent, and I feel like it felt more like the Tom Parker story rather than the Elvis Presley story. And folks can feel the way they feel. I think diehard Elvis fans will take away a lot from this film. It has been touted as a film that will be in contention for awards in later in the year, but I don't see it. Outside of Austin Butler, I don't see anything. I really don't think that this is one of the best films from Baz Luhrmann. I don't think that this is a great performance by Tom Hanks, and I didn't really feel like it was a great film in general. So with that, I'm really down the middle to finding it very kind of disappointing. To me, Elvis gets a 2-star review, and that is the highest that I can give to this film. But what did you think? Did you like this film? Did you feel relatively the same? Did you dislike this film? Let me know in the comments down below, and we'll see you on the next one.